What's up, YouTube? Your boy back once again with another sport topic, and today we're gonna talk some football, Houston Texans football. Today we're gonna talk about somebody else that's been tied to the Houston Texans, and it seems like the fans might want this person, but I think more so the team actually wants this person to be available at pick 25. We're gonna break down before we get in there, like I tell you before. If you're liking the content, make sure you're liking the channel. Make sure you're watching all the videos. Make sure you're liking all the videos. You comment all the videos. You're sharing all the videos on all social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, any type of social media platform you use. Make sure you share them same social media platforms. Also, follow me on social media as well. The link in the description below. We're still trying to get this channel growing and growing and growing. I can't do that without y'all help. So you know what that means. I need y'all to do your part. That means I need you to tell a friend, so they could tell a friend, so they could tell friends, so they could tell friends, so they could tell some more friends, and we get this channel growing and growing. Really, really, really appreciate that. Now, let's talk about it. Now, like I said on the last video when I talked about Mekabuka, it seems like the fan base specifically wants the Texans to draft a receiver. That's the overall favorite. Yeah, I did a poll on my community wall, so if you haven't went and go vote it, you can still go vote now. I still love this. You can still go vote. I had two different polls. And the first poll had, what position group do you think the Texans would draft at pick 25? Our receiver. I have offensive lineman as far as interior and tackle. It's two different positions, and also DT. And it's the overall favorite is 54% goes wide receiver, 22% goes interior offensive lineman, 21% goes tackle, 3% goes DT. Now, when you combine those offensive linemen together, that gives you 43%. So it's still 11% less of what they want them to go offensive line versus to go wide receiver. So it seems like that's what the Texan fan base specifically wants. They want the Texans to go out there and they want the Texans to draft a wide receiver at that spot. Now, also when you go look at position groups and with players, specific players, I had Matthew Golden, had Marabuka, had Jeffrey Simmons, and I had Jeffrey Simmons, I'm sorry, and Tyler Booker. And it keeps going back and forth between Abuka at 35, 36%, and Matthew Golden at 34, 35%. So it keeps on going back and forth, either having them tied or having Abuka just 1% more over Matthew Golden. So it seems like the fan base definitely want one of those two guys to be the receiver, but it seems like they lean slightly a little bit more towards the Book. And I said on my last video, I do think most of that majority of that has to do with Abuka being in Ohio State, playing with CJ, has familiarity with CJ. He had his best statistical season under CJ, but I think that has more so to do with that. But I do think that Matthew Golden is a very good prospect, and I believe that Matthew Golden, if the team has anything to say, I think Matthew Golden might be the Texans, Nick Casario, D'Amico Ryans, the franchise's actual pick. Let's talk about Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden is a wide receiver at UT, 5'11", 191 pounds, ran a 4.29 to 40 at the combine. So he ran the combine, unlike Mabuka, who only ran his pro day, didn't run at the combine. Matthew Golden ran at the combine and ran a 4.29, which is just a blazingly fast speed. But when we get into this era of the NFL and this era of prospects, it seems like everybody's running 4.3. Like the 4.2s are the new 4.3s, and the 4.3s are the new 4.4 or the old 4.4s, and vice versa. It's like everybody's getting faster. Everybody's running the 4.3. That's why it's kind of was a little bit concerning with Abuka only running a 4.45 at the pro day and didn't even run the combine. When it seems like everybody at the combine is running at minimum a mid to high 4.3. And if you're running a low 4.3 or you run the 4.2, now we're really cooking with some real speed. But Matthew Golden had 58 catches off of 85 targets, catching 68% of the passes thrown his way, 987 yards, 9 touchdowns, averaging 3.5 catches a game. Also, a guy who played primarily was an outside receiver. He only played 20% of his snaps in the slot last year and played 80% on the outside. And I think the biggest concern when it comes to Matthew Golden, when you look at his numbers last year, was the quarterback play. They up to having Quinn Ewers. Now again, when Quinn Ewers was hurt and they had Arch Manning playing in, he looked a little bit better. But I think that if if Matthew Golden would have played with a better quarterback, his numbers would be out the roof. And I think that he would probably be the number one receiver in this draft. I do believe that if Matthew Golden was put in another offense with a more competent receiver, I think that we'd be looking at Matthew Golden as a top 10 pick. And that's actually my one concern when it comes to Matthew Golden and the Houston Texans. I don't know if he's even going to be available at pick 25. You got Dallas who could potentially take a receiver. You have Green Bay that's in front of the Texans that could take a receiver. The Chargers who definitely need a receiver that's in front of us. Who else? There's another team. Like no teams this year. This is the first draft in a while that no team has multiple first round picks. But there are teams that are in front of the Texans, like I say, Dallas, Green Bay, the Chargers, um, even if Indy wanted to somehow take a receiver, I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me. Other teams out there in front of the Texans potentially want to and can draft a receiver, and it does seem like the he's a guy who's starting to shoot up the boards. Like I said yesterday or the other day about Abuka in that 25 to 40 range, anywhere from pick 20 all the way to pick 40. Matthew Golden, I think, has moved up. Now, entering in the draft process, he was a guy that was looked at as a guy really in the back half of the first, early second. After the combine, him running that 4.29 shot him up. Now, I do think that some people kind of overblow that 4.29 because people look at that and say, "Oh, he's a burner, he's a deep threat," and he can't be, possibly can't be utilized that. But Isaiah Bond was the guy that UT used as the down the field receiver. He was the guy that they utilized as their regular playmaker, and they used Isaiah Bond as the guy, the deep threat down the field receiver, and he actually ran faster than Isaiah Bond coming out of the combine. So we all know the situation is going on with that. But I definitely see him, especially him being an outside receiver, a guy that's going to be primarily and play primarily outside. I think he's a complement to what the Texans want to do on the field. I talked about Abuka and more so the whole swarm mentality and stuff like that off the field and how he's mature and more of a polished guy. It has probably a has a high floor but lower ceiling. Well, Matthew Golden has a way higher ceiling, and I think that Matthew Golden, I think he's better than what's his name, McMillan or McCullen, the receiver out of Arizona. And with the thing with Travis Hunter is because Travis Hunter is the intrigue with Travis Hunter is that he's both a receiver and a corner. I think that Travis Hunter, me personally, I think he's better suited to play receiver. But I know he probably wants to play cornerback. I think that's the position that he wants to play the most. And if he wants to play the dual position, it'd be better for him to be a corner, and then they could use him in receiving packages versus him being a receiver and them using him as a DB package. I don't really see them taking a receiver and using him in DB packages, but they definitely could take a DB and utilize him in receiver packages. We've seen it with Dion. We've seen it here in Houston with defensive ends, like with JJ. We had tight end packages for our DN to utilize him. We've seen it with the Patriots with Vrabel as a linebacker. They utilized him as a tight end. So it's much easier for you to be a primary defensive player and they give you packages on offense versus you be a primary offensive player and they give you packages on defense. We really haven't seen the latter too much. We've always seen the former in several different cases. Perry, JJ Watt, like I said, Deion Sanders, Vrabel. We've seen defensive guys have packages offensively. So that's the reason why he's probably ended up going to be playing more so, like I say, a cornerback and having packages on the offense. I know I'm kind of going off the rails a little bit, but I say that to say that if he was a primary, if he was a primary receiver, then we probably would see him as the full fledged best receiver in the draft class. And then after that, I can actually see Matthew Golden being right after that. But when you take Travis Hunter out the equation because he's a hybrid, he's a two position type player. I think that Matthew Golden, as far as just specifically receiver only, I think that he's the best receiver in this draft class, and a guy who I don't really know if he'll make it past pick 15 up into pick 20. I think I think once you get to pick 15 and then you get to pick 20, I think that might be the red zone of where he potentially could end up being drafted. And that's 5 picks in front of the Texans. And does Nick Casario decide to move up? Because every receiver that Nick Casario has ever drafted as a Houston Texan, he's moved up to get. He moved up from the fourth to the third round to get Nico. He moved up from the third round to the second round to get Mechie. He moved up from the fourth round to the third round to get Tank. He moved up from the seventh round to get Hutchinson, the sixth round to get Xavier Hudson. So he's moved up for every receiver that he's drafted. He's jumped up to get. Not to mention all the receivers he's acquired. Really, he's went out and drafted. I mean, traded for. He traded for Stephon Diggs last year. He traded for Christian Kirk this year. So when it comes to receivers and trades, that's right up Nick Caserio's alley. So will Nick Caserio decide to move up in the first round to go out there and get Matthew Golden? I actually don't think so because I think it's too many fish in the sea. It's too many receivers like a Luther Burden, like a Matthew Golden, like a Emeka Buka. There's other receivers in this draft. There's other guys in the second round that you could potentially get. I don't really see him jumping up in the first round and moving up in the first round to get a receiver. Now, maybe when we get into the second, the third round, he might move up and down in those rounds to get a receiver. But I don't see him moving from pick 25 to pick 21 to pick 20 to pick 18 to draft a receiver. I really don't. Now, maybe he moves up from pick 25 to if he moves up maybe from pick 25 to pick 24 or pick 23, I could kind of see that. I know you're like, why would you move up one spot? A lot of times when they do that, it's because the team that's behind them is trying to move up. And normally teams give the team that's being leaped in front of like the courtesy call to try to, squeeze some more assets. Hey, I might be able to get a better asset from the Texans, because the Rams are behind the Texans at pick 26. So I get more I can get more from the Texans than I could from the Rams, or more from the Texans than I could from the Ravens or the Lions or whoever else is trying to jump up to get that pick. So maybe something like that. But outside of a scenario like that, I really don't see Nick Caserio jumping up. But when I look at Matthew Golden, I look at the type of receiver he is, a guy who could cut in, cut out, a guy who's explosive, a guy that utilizes his speed at great volumes and utilizing knowing how to get open and stuff like that. A guy who's just a dynamic playmaker. I believe that he is the fan. That might not be the fan base, but might be the franchise's favorite to go and get. And I do think that he is a perfect complement on the side of Nico Collins. I definitely see him and Nico Collins, like him being Nico Collins' running mate. I definitely look at Matthew Golden and also look at CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, and like that's an offense right there. Like I said before, dealing with all the injuries and things that you've had, not only with Nico Collins, but also just the injuries and the deployed talent that you have at the receiver position. Anyways, I definitely see that Matthew Golden definitely can be a plus. Again, I understand we got Christian Kirk, and that's an add-on. That those are things that you need that room to be better. And I do agree with the fans. I do think that receiver, because it's a toss-up between receiver and offensive lineman, because you need offensive lineman, because again, it doesn't matter what all the weapons that CJ has. If he doesn't have protection in front of him, all those weapons are for naught. It doesn't matter. However, I do understand that he does need somebody to throw to, because again, that same thing flips. I don't care if you have a brick wall in front of CJ. If he don't got nobody to throw to, he ain't got nobody to throw to. I don't hear that, if CJ's the guy, he can make these guys good. That's bull. And that's something that we couch, because sometimes if guys just can't, if guys ain't good, they ain't good. I don't care what quarterback they have. I don't care what system. CJ can throw the perfect ball to Mechie, and he'll fumble it or run the wrong route or just straight drop the ball. Like, we're not gonna sit up and act like we seen CJ, that we did not see CJ throw good passes to Mechie, to Hutchinson, to these other receivers, to Dalton Schultz, and they not make the play right there in their hands, and they did nothing with it. We're not gonna sit up and act like that has not been the case. We're not gonna sit up here and act like that. Hey, I don't care how good of a quarterback that you are. Sometimes you need your receivers to make a play for you. Sometimes I'm scrambling out here. I need my receiver to come up with the football and make a play. I need you to make a play. We need playmakers on this team. Point blank, period. We need playmakers on this football team. And I believe that Matthew Golden can be a playmaker. My only thing about it is Matthew Golden going to be available at pick 25? That's the only thing that's real sketchy about this whole entire situation when it comes to Matthew Golden and the Houston Texans. Is he, can he, will he be available at pick 25? Because I do believe if he's available at pick 25, he's the pick for Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans, and the Houston Texans. And he will be a Houston Texan and will be opposite Nico Collins and will be a star playmaker for this franchise. Like, subscribe if you haven't, comment below if you haven't, click that bell, get more videos. I'll holler.